The comforting lies of our minds, debunking the myths of popular psychology. The allure of the simple answer. Hello, and welcome. We live in an age of information, but also an age of misinformation. Nowhere is this more evident than in the world of popular psychology. We are surrounded by simple, seductive ideas that promise to explain the complexities of human behavior with a neat label, a quick trick, or a staged process. These myths are comforting. They give us a sense of control and understanding in a chaotic world. But they are also, often, complete and utter nonsense. They are the intellectual equivalent of a placebo. They might make you feel better for a moment, but they don't actually cure what ails you. Today, we're going on a deep dive. We're not just skimming the surface, we're excavating the foundations of 10 of the most pervasive myths in popular psychology. We'll explore where they came from, why they're so persuasive, and what the actual science says. This is a journey into the murky space between what we want to believe and what is actually true. So, let's begin by dismantling one of the most profitable pseudoscientific enterprises of the last century.
Myth 1. The Personality Code. Why you are not 4 letters. If you've ever spent any time in the corporate world or on a certain side of the internet, you've likely encountered a personality test that categorizes you into one of 16 types, each denoted by a catchy 4-letter acronym like INTJ or ESFP. This, of course, is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and its cultural footprint is massive. It's used for team-building exercises, hiring decisions, and even as a shorthand for dating profiles. It feels authoritative, scientific, and surprisingly insightful. But here's the inconvenient truth. The MBTI is about as scientifically valid as phrenology, the Victorian practice of determining personality by feeling the bumps on one's head. It's a classic example of something that feels true because it's flattering and vague, not because it's accurate. The accidental origins of a pseudoscience. The story of the MBTI begins not in a university laboratory, but in the living room of Katharine Cook Briggs. In the early 20th century, Katharine, a homemaker with no formal training in psychology, became fascinated with human personality. She developed her own rudimentary typology system. Her world was turned upside down when she discovered the work of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, specifically his 1921 book, Psychological Types. Jung proposed that people had innate psychological preferences, which he categorized into attitudes, extroversion versus introversion, and functions, thinking versus feeling, and sensing versus intuition. Crucially, Jung saw these preferences as fluid, existing on a spectrum. He believed a well-developed individual could access all functions, even those that weren't their natural default. Briggs, and later her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers, were enthralled. However, they made a critical error in interpretation. They took Jung's nuanced dynamic theory and ossified it into a rigid binary classification system. During World War II, Myers, seeking a practical application, became convinced that her system could help place people in wartime jobs that suited their personalities, thereby aiding the war effort. Together, they developed the questionnaire that would become the MBTI. The problem? They were amateurs. They had no background in psychometrics, the science of measuring mental capacities, statistics, or test design. They didn't understand concepts like reliability, will you get the same result if you take the test twice, or validity. Does the test actually measure what it claims to measure? They were enthusiasts, not scientists. The fatal flaws in the foundation. The MBTI fails as a scientific instrument for several fundamental reasons. The false dichotomy problem. The test forces you into binary choices. Are you more organized or flexible? Do you make decisions based on logic or heart? Human personality is not binary. It is contextual and exists on a continuum. You might be meticulously organized at work, but happily messy at home. You might use logic for financial decisions and emotion for personal ones. The MBTI ignores this vast, messy middle ground where most of us actually live. The reliability issue. A reliable psychological instrument should yield consistent results over time. The MBTI fails this basic test spectacularly. Studies have shown that between 39 and 76% of test takers receive a different personality type when retaking the test just 5 weeks later. If a thermometer gave you a different reading every time you used it, you'd throw it away. Yet we base career advice and team dynamics on a tool this inconsistent. The Barnum effect. This is the psychological phenomenon where people believe vague, general personality descriptions are uniquely accurate for them. MBTI profiles are masterclasses in this. Statements like, "You have a great need for other people to like and admire you," or "You pride yourself on being an independent thinker," are so universal that they apply to almost everyone. This is the same trick used by fortune tellers and horoscopes. The descriptions feel personal not because they are, but because they are expertly crafted to be broad enough to fit nearly anyone. The real-world consequences of a pretty lie. The harm of the MBTI isn't that people find it fun, it's that it's taken seriously. Corporations spend millions of dollars annually to certify facilitators and administer these tests. This has real consequences. Hiring and promotion. Imagine a qualified, talented candidate being passed over for a promotion because their NFP personality is deemed unsuitable for leadership, while a less competent ESTJ is promoted because their letters fit the mold. This is modern-day astrology determining career paths. Self-limiting behavior. Perhaps the most pernicious effect is when people internalize their type. They start making decisions based on it. I can't take that public speaking class, I'm an introvert. I'm not a details person, I'm an intuitive. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a cage of one's own making. It stifles growth and reinforces stereotypes. A better way, the science of the Big Five. If the MBTI is horoscope-level nonsense, what does robust personality science look like? The answer is the Big Five personality traits, also known as the Ocean Model. This model, developed through decades of rigorous factor analytic research across diverse cultures, doesn't sort you into types. Instead, it scores you on 5 independent, continuous spectrums. Openness to experience, curious and inventive versus consistent and cautious. Conscientiousness, organized and efficient versus easygoing and careless. Extroversion, outgoing and energetic versus solitary and reserved. Agreeableness, friendly and compassionate versus challenging and detached. Neuroticism, sensitive and nervous versus resilient and confident. Your personality is your unique combination of scores across these 5 spectrums. This model is highly reliable, has strong predictive validity for life outcomes like relationship stability and career success, and, most importantly, it acknowledges the nuance and fluidity of human nature. It doesn't put you in a box. It draws a data-driven picture of your psychological landscape. You are not 4 letters. You are a complex, dynamic, and adaptable human being. Don't let a quiz invented by 2 well-meaning amateurs tell you otherwise.
Myth 2. The Mozart Effect. Marketing genius, not brain genius. In 1993, a small study was published in the prestigious journal Nature. Researchers at the University of California, Irvine had 36 college students listen to 10 minutes of Mozart's Sonata for 2 pianos in D major. They then took a test of spatial temporal reasoning, the ability to mentally manipulate objects in space. The students performed slightly better after listening to Mozart compared to after sitting in silence or listening to relaxation instructions. The effect was modest, equivalent to a temporary boost of 8 to 9 IQ points, and it lasted about 15 minutes. This was the seed. What grew from it was a monstrous, multi-million-dollar tree of misinformation. The media's symphony of hype. The media, always hungry for a catchy, science-y story, pounced. Headlines declared, "Mozart makes you smarter," and "classical music boosts baby brain power." The modest, temporary, and highly specific findings from a study on adults were distorted beyond recognition. The nuance was the first casualty. The original researchers, Francis Rauscher and Gordon Shaw, were studying the effects of musical priming on neural pathways in the cortex. They never claimed it made anyone permanently smarter. They certainly never mentioned babies. But the genie was out of the bottle. The Baby Einstein Industrial Complex. Entrepreneurs and marketers saw a golden opportunity. Suddenly, a vast industry emerged, preying on the anxieties of new parents desperate to give their children every possible advantage. The Baby Einstein brand became a phenomenon. Companies sold CDs, DVDs, and specialized audio systems designed to be strapped to pregnant bellies, promising to stimulate fetal brain development. Governors in the United States, caught up in the hype, began programs to provide every newborn with a classical music CD. The state of Georgia even mandated that classical music be played in state-funded daycare centers. The message was clear: if you don't pump Mozart into your womb or your nursery, you are failing your child. Deconstructing the discordant reality. The truth, as it so often does, slowly began to dismantle the beautiful fiction. The arousal and mood effect. The primary finding of the original study couldn't be reliably replicated. When other scientists tried, they found that the effect wasn't unique to Mozart. People who listened to a passage from a Stephen King audiobook, a piece by Philip Glass, or even just a story they enjoyed showed similar temporary improvements on certain tasks. It's the ability of a cup of coffee, a short-term stimulant, not a long-term cognitive enhancer. No lasting impact on intelligence. Dozens of follow-up studies have conclusively shown that listening to classical music or any music in infancy or childhood does not increase general intelligence, IQ, or cognitive capacity. A comprehensive review by the German Ministry of Education and Research in 2006 analyzed hundreds of studies and found no evidence for the long-term cognitive benefits of listening to Mozart. The potential for harm. The most alarming part of the craze was the womb speakers. Doctors began warning that blasting music directly at a developing fetus could be overstimulating or even harmful to their sensitive auditory systems. The womb is not a silent place, but it is a muffled one. Introducing loud, direct sound was an untested and potentially risky experiment driven by marketing, not medicine. The legacy of a myth. The Mozart effect is a perfect case study in how science can be hijacked and repackaged to sell a product. It preyed on parental insecurity and the desire for a simple, passive solution to the complex task of child development. The real keys to cognitive development are far less glamorous and cannot be sold in a box. Secure attachment, responsive parenting, rich verbal interaction, free play, and reading together. These activities are active, engaged, and relational. They build neural networks through experience and connection, not through passive auditory absorption. When you next hear someone claim that a specific type of music will make a child smarter, remember, they are not selling science. They are selling a symphony of snake oil.
Myth 3. Opposites attract. The enduring myth of complementary compatibility. From Romeo and Juliet to Pretty Woman, our stories are filled with the magnetic pull of opposites. The idea is romantic, dramatic, and narratively compelling. The free-spirited artist who sweeps the structured banker off her feet.
the shy bookworm who is drawn to the life of the party extrovert. We are told that opposites balance each other out, creating a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts. It's a beautiful idea, and it's almost entirely false. The data of desire, what science actually says. For over a century, sociologists and psychologists have been studying what draws people together. They've analyzed data from millions of couples, examining over 130 different traits, from core values and beliefs to seemingly trivial preferences. The results are overwhelming and consistent. Similarity attracts. This phenomenon is known as assortative mating. We are far more likely to form lasting romantic partnerships with people who are like us. This alignment occurs across a stunningly wide range of domains: demographics, age, race, ethnicity, education level, and socioeconomic status, attitudes and values, political and religious views, life goals and fundamental worldviews, behavioral patterns, levels of extroversion, agreeableness, and conscientiousness, intelligence. People tend to partner with those of similar IQ. The surprisingly specific, studies have even found correlations in the most unexpected places, such as the age at which individuals lost their virginity, the number of previous partners, and even the length of their ring fingers. The degree of similarity is staggering. Meta-analyses suggest that between 82% and 89% of the time, couples are significantly more alike than they are different. Your perfect match is statistically unlikely to be a mysterious stranger from a completely different world. It is far more likely to be someone who shares your values, your sense of humor, your taste in movies, and your desire to binge-watch the same shows on a Friday night. Why similarity feels so good? The psychological reasons for this are rooted in basic human needs. Validation, being with someone who shares your views and preferences, makes you feel validated and understood. Your reality is confirmed, not questioned. This creates a foundation of trust and security. Ease and efficiency. Relationships are hard work. Having a similar background and set of expectations reduces friction and misunderstanding. Communication is easier. You don't have to constantly explain yourself or defend your preferences. It's simply less exhausting. Shared reality. Couples build a shared reality, a common worldview, a set of private jokes, and a mutual understanding of what is important. This is much easier to construct when you start from a place of fundamental alignment. The 3% where opposites sometimes attract. The research isn't completely monolithic. There are a tiny handful of traits accounting for only about 3% of the studied variables where a slight tendency for complementarity might exist. The most commonly cited example is dominance-submissiveness. A highly dominant person may sometimes pair with a more easygoing partner. Another potential area is energy cycles, the classic morning person and night owl dynamic. However, even these differences are often minor and operate within a broader context of overwhelming similarity in other, more critical areas. The opposite's illusion, why the myth persists. If we mostly partner with people like us, why does the myth of opposites attracting feel so true? Narrative salience. The exceptions are highly memorable. The couple from wildly different backgrounds is a great story. The couple who met in the same graduate program share the same political views and both love hiking is normal. We notice the unusual and mistake it for the rule. Novelty and initial attraction. Opposites can certainly create a powerful spark of initial attraction. The differences can be exciting and novel. However, research shows that what creates initial attraction is often different from what creates long-term relationship satisfaction. That initial spark of excitement often fades, while fundamental incompatibilities remain. The balance fallacy. We confuse complementary with opposite. A partner who is organized where you are messy isn't your opposite. They're compensating for a skill you lack, which is a form of practical teamwork. This is different from having diametrically opposed core values, like one partner wanting children and the other not, which is a recipe for conflict. The takeaway is not that you should seek a clone of yourself. The takeaway is that lasting love is built on a foundation of shared common ground. The most successful relationships are not about finding your missing half, but about finding a whole person with whom you can build a shared world. The search for a partner is not about completing yourself, but about finding someone whose song you can sing in harmony with your own.
Myth 4. The multitasking superhero. The high cost of split attention. In our modern, hyper-connected world, the ability to multitask is worn as a badge of honor. We admire the executive who can simultaneously lead a Zoom meeting, answer emails, and draft a report. We brag about texting while walking, listening to a podcast while cooking, and scrolling through social media while watching TV. We have convinced ourselves that juggling multiple tasks is the pinnacle of productivity and efficiency. Neuroscience has a different, far less flattering name for it: task switching. And it's making us slower, dumber, and more prone to error. The brain's single spotlight. The human brain is not designed for parallel processing when it comes to conscious, attention-demanding tasks. It's more like a stage with a single, powerful spotlight. This spotlight of focused attention can only shine on one thing at a time. When we multitask, what we are actually doing is rapidly and frantically swinging that spotlight from one task to another. You're not writing an email and listening to a colleague at the same time. You are writing a sentence, spotlight on email, then switching to listen to a phrase, spotlight on colleague, then switching back to email to remember what you were writing. The cognitive toll of the switch. Each time you switch that spotlight, there is a cost. This is known as the switch cost, or cognitive residue. The rules of the game. Your brain has something called task sets, the rules and mental procedures needed for a specific activity. The rules for writing a formal email are different from the rules for having a casual chat. Every time you switch tasks, your brain must disengage from the rules of the first task, email writing, load and activate the rules for the second task, listening, inhibit the now irrelevant rules from the first task to prevent interference. The time tax. This process of loading, unloading, and inhibiting takes time, measurable time. Studies show that even rapid switch tasks can cost a few tenths of a second per switch. This might not sound like much, but multiplied over hundreds of switches a day, it adds up to a significant loss of productivity. You are literally making everything take longer. The error rate. Switch costs aren't just about time, they're also about accuracy. Each switch increases the probability of making a mistake. You might send an email without the crucial attachment, miss a key point in a conversation, or add salt to your coffee instead of sugar. The mental crumbs from the previous task interfere with the new one, scrambling your short-term memory. The depth deficit. Complex tasks like writing a report, analyzing data, or learning a new skill require a state of deep work or flow. This is a state of uninterrupted, concentrated focus where you can make significant cognitive progress. Multitasking is the mortal enemy of deep work. The constant context switching prevents you from ever reaching that state of productive flow, ensuring your work remains shallow and superficial. The myth of the digital native multitasker. A common rebuttal is that younger generations, having grown up with technology, are better at multitasking. The research is clear. This is not true. Heavy media multitaskers actually perform worse on tests of cognitive control, working memory, and task switching ability than their lighter multitasking peers. They are more easily distracted and find it harder to filter out irrelevant information. They are not learning to multitask effectively. They are training themselves to be distracted. The illusion of productivity. Why do we persist in this counterproductive behavior? Because multitasking feels productive. The constant stream of notifications, completions, and switches provides a dopamine hit, a sense of being busy and important. We confuse activity with accomplishment. We feel like we're doing a lot, even as the quality and quantity of our actual output plummets. Reclaiming your focus, the antidote to multitasking. The solution is not the better app or a new organizational system.
It is a fundamental shift in how we work. Monotasking. Deliberately focus on one single task at a time. Use a notepad to capture intrusive thoughts about other tasks so you can dismiss them and return to your focus. Time blocking. Schedule specific, uninterrupted blocks of time for deep work. Treat this time as a sacred appointment. Minimize interruptions. Turn off non-essential notifications. Put your phone in another room. Use website blockers during focus sessions. Batch process. Group similar, shallow tasks together, like answering emails, returning calls, instead of peppering them throughout your day. The next time you feel the urge to multitask, remember, you are not a productivity superhero. You are a cognitive being with a single spotlight of attention. The goal is not to swing it faster, but to aim it with intention. True efficiency isn't about doing everything at once. It's about doing one thing well and then moving on to the next.
Myth 5. Subliminal seduction. The power of suggestion over mind control. The story is the stuff of urban legend. In 1957, a market researcher named James Vicari claimed to have conducted a terrifying experiment in a New Jersey movie theater. He said he flashed messages like, "Drink Coca-Cola" and "Eat popcorn" for a mere 1/30,000th of a second, far too fast for the conscious mind to perceive during the film Picnic. The result, he proclaimed, was a staggering 18% increase in Coke sales and a 58% increase in popcorn sales. The public and media erupted in a panic. The idea that advertisers could secretly puppet master our minds, forcing us to buy products against our will, tapped into deep Cold War-era fears of brainwashing and loss of autonomy. Congress held hearings. The concept of subliminal advertising was born, and it has haunted our collective imagination ever since. There's just one problem. James Vicari was a fraud. The confession of a con man. Years later, Vicari admitted his experiment was a hoax. He had fabricated the data. He was likely trying to save his failing marketing business by creating a demand for his new subliminal persuasion services. Subsequent attempts to replicate his findings under controlled conditions failed utterly. The entire foundation of the subliminal mind control myth was built on a lie. What science actually says about subliminal stimuli. This is not to say that subliminal perception isn't real. It is. Our brains can process information presented below the threshold of conscious awareness. However, the effects of this processing are incredibly weak, fleeting, and a far cry from the powerful mind control of popular myth. Priming, not persuading. The real effect of subliminal stimuli is called priming. It's a subtle nudge, not a command. For example, if you are already thirsty, seeing a subliminal flash of a drink might make you slightly more likely to choose that drink over another option if presented with a choice immediately afterward. It can't make you thirsty out of the blue, and it certainly can't make you get up, go to the store, and buy a Coke you didn't want. Context is king. Subliminal messages are powerless without a pre-existing context or need. A subliminal message to buy a car won't make you go into debt for a new Ferrari if you're happy with your current vehicle and have no intention of shopping. The stimulus can only amplify an existing thought or feeling. It cannot create one from scratch. No behavioral control. Decades of rigorous research have concluded that subliminal messages cannot make you do things that are contrary to your values, desires, or will. They cannot make you vote for a candidate you despise, commit a crime, or develop a craving for a food you hate. The idea is a sci-fi fantasy, not a psychological reality. The real hidden persuaders. While we've been worrying about invisible messages,
advertisers have been using a host of far more powerful and completely conscious techniques to influence us. These are the real tools of persuasion. Classical conditioning. Pairing a product with positive imagery, e.g., a beer with friends laughing on a beach. Social proof. Using testimonials, influencers, and most popular labels. Scarcity. Limited time offer. Only 3 left in stock. Repetition. Simple, maddeningly effective jingles and slogans. Product placement. Seamlessly integrating brands into movies and TV shows we enjoy. These techniques work precisely because we can see and hear them. They appeal to our emotions, our social nature, and our cognitive biases in a much more direct and potent way than any hidden flash ever could. The legacy of the lie. The myth of subliminal mind control persists because it's a compelling narrative. It externalizes our own lack of control, giving us a villain to blame for our impulsive purchases. It's easier to believe we were secretly manipulated than to admit we were swayed by a clever ad or a moment of weakness. The real lesson of the Vicari hoax isn't about the power of hidden messages. It's about the power of a good story to capture our imagination and the vulnerability of a public eager to believe in simple, secret explanations for complex human behavior. The next time you hear a claim about secret commands in ads, remember, the most powerful persuaders are the ones right in front of your eyes.
Myth 6. The photographic memory, a mental superpower that doesn't exist. We've all heard the stories. The savant who can glance at a page of a book and recite it perfectly backwards. The detective who can recall every minute detail of a crime scene as if looking at a photograph. This concept of photographic memory, or eidetic memory, is a staple of fiction and a popular aspiration. It represents the ultimate form of mental mastery, a perfect, immutable recording of reality. It is also a complete neurological fantasy. A century-long search for a ghost. Scientists have been actively searching for a verified case of true photographic memory, the ability to recall an image with perfect pixel-level accuracy after only a brief exposure for over a century. Despite countless claims and popular anecdotes, they have not found a single uncontested case. This is not for lack of trying. Researchers like the renowned psychologist Charles Strohmeyer III in the 1970s thought they had found a candidate, a remarkable woman named Elizabeth, who could apparently fuse 2 random dot patterns, each shown to a different eye on different days, into a recognizable 3D image. However, Elizabeth refused to be tested further, and the phenomenon was never replicated, leaving the scientific community deeply skeptical. The artist, not the camera. How memory really works. The reason photographic memory is a myth is that human memory does not work like a camera. A camera captures a passive, objective record of light. Human memory is an active, reconstructive, and interpretive process. Reconstruction, not replay. Every time you recall an event, your brain is not playing back a recording. It is literally reconstructing the event from scratch each time, using stored fragments of information. It's like an artist repainting a picture every time you want to see it. The telephone game in your head. This process of reconstruction is highly susceptible to influence. Each time you recall an event, you inadvertently alter it slightly, incorporating new information, emotions, and biases. It's a game of telephone you play with yourself across time. The message of the memory gets warped with each retelling. Gist over detail. Our brains are designed for efficiency, not fidelity. We are excellent at remembering the gist of an event, the overall meaning, the emotional tone, the main characters. We're terrible at remembering precise perceptual details, like the number of buttons on a shirt or the exact wording of a conversation. The confusion with eidetic imagery.
What is often mistaken for photographic memory is a much rarer and less powerful phenomenon called eidetic imagery. This is found almost exclusively in a small percentage of young children, estimated at 2 to 10%, and fades by adolescence. An eidetic imager can maintain a vivid, detailed visual image of a scene for a short period, typically 30 seconds to a few minutes, after it has been removed from view. They can see the image and describe it as if it were still there. However, this is not a perfect photograph. The image still contains errors, fades quickly, and is not accessible forever. It is a prolonged afterimage, not a permanent mental file. The masters of memory, technique, not talent. What about people with truly exceptional memories, like memory athletes who can memorize the order of a shuffled deck of cards in seconds? Are they not proof? No. These individuals almost universally rely on trained mnemonic strategies, not innate camera-like recall. They use ancient techniques like the method of Loci or visualization and elaboration. Their brains are not structurally different. They have simply trained a cognitive skill to an extraordinary level. They are master artists using advanced techniques, not human cameras. The danger of the perfect memory myth. Believing in photographic memory can be harmful. It can make people with normal, fallible memories feel inadequate. It can lead to an over-reliance on the myth of one's own perfect recall in high-stakes situations, like eyewitness testimony, where memory is notoriously unreliable. Our memories are not meant to be perfect records. They are meant to be meaning-making tools. They are the stories we tell ourselves about our past, stories that are shaped by who we are now. They're beautiful, flawed, and deeply human. A perfect memory would be a curse, an unedited, overwhelming torrent of irrelevant detail. Our ability to forget, to generalize, and to reshape our past is not a bug in our system, it's a feature. The next time you forget where you put your keys, don't curse your lack of a photographic memory. Thank your brain for doing its job, filtering the world and preserving what truly matters.
Myth 7. Venting anger, fanning the flames of fury. It's a scene etched into our cultural consciousness. The frustrated character screams into a pillow, punches a mattress, or takes a baseball bat to a dilapidated car. The underlying theory, often called catharsis theory, is that anger is like steam in a pressure cooker. If you don't let it out through a safe release valve, it will build up until it explodes. Therefore, venting, expressing anger through vigorous, non-destructive activity, should purge the emotion, leaving you calm and relieved. It is an intuitive and satisfying idea. It is also almost completely backwards. The flawed foundation of catharsis. The concept of catharsis dates back to Aristotle, but it was popularized in psychology by Sigmund Freud. Freud believed that pent-up psychic energy from repressed emotions could cause neurosis, and that expressing those emotions could provide relief. However, modern experimental psychology has thoroughly debunked this idea as it applies to anger. Study after study has shown that venting anger does not reduce it. It rehearses and reinforces it. Training your brain for battle. When you engage in aggressive acts to vent anger, even against inanimate objects, you are not releasing anger energy. You are actively practicing being angry. Physiological arousal. Venting increases your heart rate, blood pressure, and levels of adrenaline and other stress hormones. It puts your body into fight mode. This physiological state is the very opposite of calmness. Cognitive rehearsal. While you're punching that pillow, you're almost certainly ruminating on the source of your anger. You're replaying the insult, the injustice, the frustration in your mind. You are strengthening the neural pathways associated with that angry thought pattern, making it easier to trigger in the future. The bonus pain effect. As the script wryly noted, the venter often ends up with a sore hand, a hoarse voice, or bruised toes, physical pain that simply gives them another reason to be angry. They are now angry and in pain. Research shows that people who vent their anger regularly become more prone to anger, not less. They develop a habit of aggressive responding. The pressure cooker model is incorrect. A more accurate model is the fire model. Anger is a fire. Venting is like throwing gasoline on it. It makes the fire bigger. The guy who kicked the tire, a case study in failed catharsis.
The anecdote in the script is a perfect illustration. The man is angry, he kicks his car tire, an act of venting. The results? Physical consequence, a bruised toe. Physical consequence, a sore throat from screaming. Emotional consequence, he is still just as angry. The venting ritual provided no emotional resolution. It only added physical injury to the existing emotional distress. The source of the anger remains unaddressed. What actually works? Turning the dial down. If venting is counterproductive, what should we do with our anger? The goal is not to let it out aggressively, but to turn it down cognitively and physiologically. Calming the body. Since anger is a physiological state, the first step is to calm the body. This directly counteracts the fight or flight response. Deep, slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes relaxation. Moderate exercise, a brisk walk or a run can help, not as a venting tool, but as a way to metabolize stress hormones and produce endorphins. The key is to do it without ruminating on the anger. Cool down, literally. Splashing cold water on your face can trigger the mammalian diving reflex, which slows the heart rate. Calming the mind. Once the physiological intensity has decreased, you can address the thoughts fueling the anger. Cognitive reframing. Challenge the thoughts that are making you angry. Was that person's comment truly meant as an insult, or could it be misinterpreted? Is this situation worth the emotional energy I'm investing in it? Problem solving. If the anger is justified, channel the energy into constructive action. Instead of screaming about a problem, make a plan to address it. Anger can be a powerful motivator for change when directed purposefully. Distraction and time. Sometimes, the best thing to do is to consciously shift your attention to something else for a while. Sleeping on it is a cliché because it works. The intensity of anger almost always fades with time, allowing for a more rational response later. Anger is a normal, healthy human emotion. It signals something is wrong. The goal is not to eliminate it, but to listen to its message and respond to it intelligently, not impulsively. Don't fan the flames. Let the fire burn down to embers, and then you can see clearly enough to decide what to build from the ashes.
Myth 8. The Power Pose, a tale of p-values and puffed chests. In 2010, a TED Talk by social psychologist Amy Cuddy set the world on fire. The premise was simple and intoxicating. By changing your body language for just 2 minutes, by adopting a power pose, think Wonder Woman, hands on hip, chest out, chin up, you could alter your brain chemistry. You could increase your levels of testosterone, the dominance hormone, decrease your levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and thereby become more confident, assertive, and successful. You could, as she famously put it, fake it till you make it. The talk became one of the most popular in TED history, viewed over 60 million times. It spawned a cottage industry of coaches, corporate seminars, and articles. People were power posing in bathroom stalls before job interviews. It was a perfect story, an easy, quick fix for the universal human experience of self-doubt. Then, the house of cards collapsed. The replication crisis comes for the pose. The central tenet of the scientific method is replication. For a finding to be considered robust, other researchers, using the same methods, must be able to achieve the same results. When other labs tried to replicate the power pose effects, they failed over and over again. A 2015 meta-analysis that pooled data from dozens of replication attempts found no significant effect of power posing on hormone levels. The original dramatic changes in testosterone and cortisol could not be reproduced. Further studies also cast doubt on the behavioral effects. While some found a very small self-reported increase in feelings of power, a subjective feeling, they found no evidence that power posing actually improved performance in job interviews, public speaking tasks, or risky decision-making. P-hacking and the file drawer problem. So, what happened? How did such a dramatic finding turn out to be so fragile? The answer lies in 2 common pitfalls in psychological research. P-hacking. This refers to the practice of manipulating statistical analyses until they produce a statistically significant result, a p-value of less than 0.05. This can be done by collecting many different measures and only reporting the ones that worked by trying different ways of excluding outlier data points, or by stopping data collection once a desired result is achieved. It's like torturing the data until it confesses. Critics have argued that the original PowerPost study was a victim of p-hacking, with its small sample size and specific analytical choices making the dramatic results more likely to be a statistical fluke than a real effect. The file drawer problem. This is the tendency for studies with null or boring results to remain unpublished, sitting in researchers' file drawers, while studies with exciting positive findings get published. This creates a distorted view of the scientific literature, making a weak effect appear much stronger than it actually is because all the failed attempts to find it are invisible. The kernel of truth, the perception of confidence. While the core physiological claim of power posing has been thoroughly debunked, the story isn't entirely without merit. There is a smaller, more nuanced effect that seems to hold up. Expansive postures can influence how others perceive you. Studies suggest that people who sit or stand in more open, expansive postures are perceived by others as being more confident and powerful than those who are closed off and constricted. This is a social signaling effect, not a neuroendocrinological one. Your pose might change how you are seen, but it doesn't appear to change your underlying biology in any meaningful way. Furthermore, the placebo effect is powerful. If you genuinely believe that standing like a superhero will make you more confident, the act of doing it might give you a small psychological boost through sheer belief. But this is a far cry from the original claim of chemically rewiring your brain for dominance. The real path to confidence. The allure of the power pose was its promise of a shortcut. Confidence, however, is not a pose. It is a product of competence and preparation. The real, evidence-based ways to feel more confident before a high-stakes situation are far less sexy than striking a pose. Thorough preparation, knowing your material inside and out, is the single biggest contributor to genuine confidence. Practice and rehearsal. Simulating the event reduces uncertainty and builds self-efficacy. Focus on the task, not on yourself. Shifting your attention from "how am I doing?" to "what is the next point I need to make?" reduces self-conscious anxiety. Cognitive reframing. Reinterpreting nervous excitement as a positive energy that can enhance performance. The story of the power pose is a cautionary tale about the allure of simple, science-y sounding solutions to complex human problems. It reminds us to be skeptical of dramatic findings, especially when they promise a quick fix. True power doesn't come from a 2-minute pose in a bathroom stall. It comes from the hard, unglamorous work of building real skill.
Myth 9. The Kubler-Ross Stages of Grief, a map that became a straitjacket. If you ask anyone on the street to name the stages of grief, they can likely recite them: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. This 5-stage model, introduced by Swiss-American psychiatrist Elisabeth Kubler-Ross in her 1969 book On Death and Dying, has become the undisputed cultural script for how we are supposed to experience loss. It is taught in medical and nursing schools, cited by therapists, and offered as a roadmap to the bereaved. There's just one problem. Elisabeth Kubler-Ross never intended it to be a prescription for grief. And the research that has followed for the last 50 years has shown that it is a deeply flawed and inaccurate model for how most people actually grieve. A model misunderstood from the start. Kubler-Ross developed her model based on interviews with people who were dying, not people who were bereaved. She was describing the emotional stages a person might go through when confronting their own terminal diagnosis, not the stages a loved one goes through after a death. Furthermore, Kubler-Ross herself never claimed these were linear, universal, or mandatory stages. She observed these emotions in her patients, but noted they could occur in any order, repeat, or that some might not be experienced at all. She was describing common themes, not a rigid sequence. The research reality. Grief is a roller coaster, not a ladder. Decades of longitudinal research on bereavement have painted a very different picture. Grief is not a linear progression of stages that one completes and moves on from. It is better understood as a complex, dynamic, and highly individualized process. The absence of stages, studies that track grieving individuals over time find little evidence that people reliably progress through denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance in that order. Many people do not experience all these emotions, and those who do experience them in a jumbled, non-sequential way. The dual process model. A more evidence-based model is the dual process of coping, Strobe and Shute 1999. This model proposes that effective grieving involves oscillating between two types of coping. Loss-oriented coping, dealing directly with the emotions of the loss, sadness, yearning, anger. This is the grief work. Restoration-oriented coping, dealing with the secondary consequences of the loss, learning to live alone, managing finances, building a new identity. This is about adapting to a changed world. Healthy grievers don't move in a straight line. They oscillate or move back and forth between confronting their pain and taking a break from it to attend to the demands of life. This is a fluid process, not a staged one. Resilience is common. Perhaps the most important finding that contradicts the stage model is that resilience is the most common response to loss. A large body of research shows that the majority of people, while experiencing profound sadness, do not become clinically depressed or incapacitated by grief. They experience intense pain, but they also continue to function, find meaning, and experience positive emotions alongside the negative ones. They integrate the loss into their lives and move forward without ever experiencing a clear-cut stage of anger or bargaining. The harm of the stage mentality. The widespread adoption of the stage model has done real harm by creating unrealistic and pathologizing expectations. The checklist of grief. Bereaved individuals often feel pressured to experience each stage. If they aren't feeling angry, they might worry, "Am I doing this wrong? When will the anger come?" This creates anxiety about the grieving process itself. Pathologizing resilience. People who are naturally resilient and adapt well to loss are often made to feel guilty or cold for not being devastated enough or for not showing their grief in the proper way. They are accused of being in denial, the first stage, when in fact they may simply be coping healthfully. A timeline for grief. The stage model implies an endpoint, acceptance. This can lead to people, and those around them, expecting to be over it by a certain time. When they aren't, they feel like failures. Grief has no timeline. A new narrative for grief. We need to retire the stages of grief and replace them with a more compassionate and accurate understanding. Grief is unique. There's no one right way to grieve. Grief is not linear. It comes in waves. Good days and bad days are normal. Grief and joy can coexist. Finding moments of happiness does not dishonor the deceased. The goal is not to get over a loss, but to learn to live with it and integrate it into the story of your life. The Kubler-Ross model was a groundbreaking effort to start a conversation about death and dying, but it was a starting point, not a finish line. By clinging to this outdated map, we risk turning a guide for the dying into a straitjacket for the living. Myth 10. Left brain versus right brain people, the greatest neurological myth ever sold. This is the granddaddy of them all. The idea is pervasive. Logical, analytical, and methodical people are left-brained, while creative, intuitive, and artistic people are right-brained. This dichotomy has spawned countless online quizzes, corporate training seminars, and self-help books. It provides a simple, satisfying explanation for human difference. Our personality is determined by which half of our brain is in the driver's seat. It is also a neurological fairy tale, a complete and total myth. The grain of truth that spawned a mountain of nonsense. The myth originates from a kernel of scientific fact. The brain does have hemispheric lateralization. This means that certain cognitive functions are processed more predominantly in one hemisphere than the other. This was discovered through research on split brain patients, individuals who had the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerve fibers connecting the two hemispheres, surgically severed to treat severe epilepsy. By studying these patients, researchers like Roger Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga made fascinating discoveries. For example, they found that the left hemisphere is typically more dominant for language processing, while the right hemisphere is more involved in processing spatial relationships and facial recognition. From specialization to stereotype. The pop psychology industry took this nuanced finding about functional specialization and turned it into a sweeping personality typology. This was a catastrophic leap in logic. The brain is an integrated system. In a healthy, intact brain, the two hemispheres are in constant communication through the massive superhighway of the corpus callosum, which carries millions of signals back and forth every second. They work together seamlessly on virtually every task. You are not using one side at a time, you're using your whole brain all the time. No evidence for personality lateralization. There is zero scientific evidence that personality types, creativity, or overall cognitive style are determined by a dominant hemisphere. Brain imaging studies, fMRIs, show that complex tasks like creative writing, logical reasoning, or making a scientific discovery activate neural networks that are distributed across both hemispheres. A creative act like painting involves not just the creative right hemisphere's spatial and visual processing, but also the logical left hemisphere's fine motor control, planning, and sequencing. The plasticity principle. The brain is highly plastic. If one hemisphere is damaged, especially early in life, the other hemisphere can often take over its functions. This would be impossible if our personalities and core cognitive abilities were hardwired into one side. Why the myth is so resilient. Despite being thoroughly debunked by neuroscience, the myth persists because it's incredibly appealing. It's simple. It provides a clean, easy-to-understand binary for the messy continuum of human personality. It's flattering. It allows people to categorize themselves and others in a way that feels scientific and validating. I'm a right-brained creative. Sounds more substantive than I enjoy painting. It's marketable. It's the foundation for a huge industry of books, tests, and seminars that promise to unlock your dormant creative or logical potential. The real nature of the brain. A more accurate metaphor for the brain is not a divided ruler, but a symphony orchestra. Different sections, brain regions, have specialties: the strings, the brass, the woodwinds. But to create a beautiful piece of music, every section must play together in a coordinated, integrated way, led by a conductor, the brain's executive control networks. The music emerges from the collaboration of the whole, not the dominance of one section. You are not a left-brained or right-brained person. You are a whole-brained person. Your unique personality and talents are the product of the intricate, dynamic, and interconnected dance of billions of neurons across your entire brain. To reduce this magnificent complexity to a simple binary is to miss the true wonder of what's inside your skull. Thinking critically in the age of pop psychology. We've journeyed through 10 of the most pervasive myths in popular psychology, from the four-letter prison of the MBTI to the neurological fantasy of left brain dominance. We've seen how a kernel of truth can be distorted beyond recognition, how a fraudulent study can spawn a multi-million-dollar industry, and how a well-intentioned observation can become a cultural straitjacket. The common thread running through all these myths is our deep human desire for simplicity. We crave clean categories, easy answers, and quick fixes. We want a roadmap for our personalities, a cheat code for success, and a manual for our emotions. The reality of human psychology, however, is gloriously, frustratingly complex. It's a science of probabilities, spectrums, and contexts, not certainties, binaries, and absolutes. So how do we navigate this landscape of information and misinformation? How do we separate the scientific wheat from the pop psychology chaff? We must cultivate critical thinking. Here are a few tools. Beware of absolutes and grand claims. If it sounds too simple or too good to be true, it probably is. Be skeptical of any theory that claims to explain all human behavior with one neat trick or a handful of categories. Ask about replication. Is this finding based on a single study, or has it been replicated by other independent researchers? The replication crisis has shown us that many flashy findings are one-hit wonders. Follow the money. Who is selling this idea? Is it a researcher publishing in peer-reviewed journals, or is it a guru selling books, seminars, and certification courses? A financial incentive doesn't automatically make an idea wrong, but it should prompt additional scrutiny. Embrace nuance. The most accurate answers in psychology are usually "it depends." Behavior is context-dependent. Look for theories that acknowledge complexity and individual differences rather than ignoring them. The goal of this deep dive was not to make you cynical about psychology, but to make you appreciate the real thing. Evidence-based psychology is a powerful tool for understanding ourselves and others. It helps us build better habits, foster healthier relationships, and create a more compassionate society. But to access its true power, we must first clear away the comforting lies we've been telling ourselves. The truth about our minds is more complex, more surprising, and ultimately more fascinating than any myth could ever be. It's time to put the myths to rest and embrace the messy, wonderful, and evidence-based reality of being human. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Cool Dude Explains, where comedy meets curiosity. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite myth or question in the comments. Stay curious, stay cool, and I'll see you in the next video.